Hello and welcome to The Mohit Show. Today I'll be covering some more stories from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. I will be protecting the identities of these posters since individuals in this community have been harassed when their stories have been discussed. This video's first post, titled Postop Female to Male to Female Detrans. Chronic pains, loss of sexuality. Hi, I have not visited this board in a long time. I plan to come back years later to thank the community and share encouraging messages. But my physical health has only gone worse, sadly. And the healthcare in my country has been in a limbo for a long time. I've paid my butt off in private clinics, but they had even less experience or help to offer. So I've been feeling desperate and depressed than ever. I've had breast removal and full hysterectomy. My body doesn't produce hormones itself anymore. Now, instead of testosterone hormones, I'm fully dependent on synthetic estrogen for the rest of my life. Hysterectomy, at least back in my transition days 2010s, was recommended to female to males who had been on testosterone 5+ years. If I had known back then that I could have lived menstruation-free with less issues without removing everything, I would have not done the full removal. I'm dependent on estrogen hormonal treatment therapy, local estrogen creams, and insertable tablets, experiencing menopause at my 20s. Testosterone made me hypersexual, to the point it was distracting, time-consuming, intruding. Gone were my asexual days. It was so strong it overran my self-hatred and disgust towards my own body. I did like the more physically centered experiences that came along with the testosterone-altered bodily changes. But there's not even that positive side anymore as it went away with the testosterone. So, all that is behind. I'm back to asexual stage, mentally and physically. The idea of anything getting close to my body in a sexual sense causes a stress reaction. The atrophy I've been treating with 2 local estrogen medicines. However, I've been living with UTI-like symptoms for over half a year now. No infection, yeast or other has been detected. Ultra showed nothing. Doctors have been throwing me around, telling to consult a different one whenever I get to another. Daily life is difficult, and the pain consumes my days. I had to stop pain medication I took for months because of the side effects. I've asked doctors for help, alternatives for the painkillers. Haven't been able to reach anyone. They have nothing else to offer at the moment than to numb the symptoms, though not even that anymore. My intestines, abdomen muscles, and outer genitals are in constant pain. No visible abnormalities have been noticed by so far. Except some swelling at the start of this year, but that has gone better. The double mastectomy left some breast tissue behind, which the estrogen HRT makes to swell, causing chronic pain as well, as the estrogen levels that causes the reaction stays steady. Doctor told me a year ago just to bear it. There's a chance it could pass. I wish they could remove anything that was left behind in the breasts so this pain could stop. I thought a year ago, when I switched to estrogen, that things wouldn't be easy, but eventually would get better. I wasn't prepared that I would become this crippled. For the lack of a better word, non-English speaker, sorry, at my late 20s. I'm fearful of the possible side effects of the long-term synthetic hormonal therapy. If I'm on a right dose, doctor wants to raise it, but can't do that till blood-related issue gets solved by some other doctor, osteoporosis, tiredness, non-existent libido, etc. And all this because it was systematically easier and cheaper for the younger me to get these physical treatments than a good long therapy to resolve trauma, internalized and external misogyny, body dysmorphia, and all that jam. I wish I had done fewer permanent decisions at that age. I wonder what kind of person I will be today, by physical appearance and mentally. Thank you for your time. I hope this vent wasn't discouraging. I wish you all good health and courage. You're not alone. Next post, titled, Transition just isn't good enough treatment for people with strong gender dysphoria. This is more anecdotal evidence than anything, but I feel like of the trans people I talk to, the less intense dysphoria was before transition, the happier they were with the transition. Conversely, people with strong dysphoria remain dissatisfied throughout. I feel like transition can genuinely help a person if they only dislike some, usually more auxiliary characteristics of their sex, like balding, a lot of body hair, growing breasts, or not having a very muscular physique, or just stuff like being mistreated in their gender role. These are all things that transition can fix, and I find that if people transition because of this, they're generally satisfied. But for those of us who have intense dysphoria, transition just does not do enough. Bottom surgeries for female to male and HRT for male to female especially leave a lot to be desired. The impact is just not there, and even when you try to live as the opposite gender, you feel intense dysphoria. I feel like it would be much more helpful if transition was not demonized, where it either pushes people to transition or lock themselves away mentally, but rather something that needs counseling and alternative treatments because the science for a good enough transition is just not there. From the comments, the fix is a radical societal shift towards compassion and respect. Until that happens, nothing will ever be enough. The next post, titled, Is it wrong to be disappointed when looking for results? While I was still questioning myself, I decided to look through after photos of people that went on hormones, and apparently my expectations were too high. My flaming desire to be the opposite gender waned, and this opinion got me lambasted in pro-trans subs. So please tell me, is it wrong to be disappointed? From the comments. I mean, I had a lot of expectations going in as a male to female. My former therapist assured me that I would absolutely pass and be like those people in those transition timelines. But in the end, I did not. So it's not wrong to be disappointed. There were also assurances that transitioning would solve any of the underlying problems I had, and it did not. I am mixed on whether I would press a button and just instantly become female. I probably lean slightly towards wanting to be female rather than male, but I've started becoming comfortable again with being a guy, and that's been nice. Another commenter adds, I would medically transition if there were zero complications and health risks. Practically if there was a magical button. But I am too preoccupied with those complications and the continuous medical stuff, even if it's just a subscription, and I'm afraid that I won't pass anyway. Another commenter adds, I'm disappointed as well. Gender-affirming therapy is highly experimental with negative long-term health effects and a false expectation that you can become the opposite sex. I feel like gender-affirming therapy is advertised like In-N-Out Burger. For me personally, I would love to be offered treatments where a medical professional is questioning me on my visual, tactile, and sensory perceptions of being male. I have a therapist now who is wonderful and is asking all the right questions. I would also love to have treatments that alleviate gender dysphoria from the inside. I don't want to feel this incorrect perception that I'm in the wrong body when I know I'm not. The thing with gender dysphoria, my personal experience, is that the visual perceptions are so strong that your internal sense of self is adamant that you're the opposite sex when you know you aren't. Gender-affirming therapy offers a short-term band-aid. The problem is that gender dysphoria is a moving target that will refocus on all the things that aren't male/female enough. So you convince yourself you need another surgery, another shot, etc. However, when there aren't any more surgeries that can be done, checkmark, the emptiness of gender dysphoria is still there. I think this sums up where you're coming from, but let me know if I'm off base. Another commenter adds, for what it's worth, I had incredible results and yet still ended up detransitioning. Another commenter adds, same. Next post, titled, Peace and Love for My Body All of a Sudden. I've been in the midst of deciding to detransition and I love my body. I've been working for this while identifying as trans and was getting close to it, but it was paired with a strange feeling, almost like it was a foggy type of acceptance for it if that makes sense. The acceptance of my body wasn't natural, forced, or clear. But since deciding I'm probably going to detransition, I've seen my body in a new light, lifted from the narrative of being in the wrong body. I feel really good, sexy, confident, and peaceful about my body. Anyone else experiencing this while drifting away from a negative narrative about their body? From the comments, one person adds, yeah, same. After I realized I had enough with transition and I could do it anymore, I felt a sudden wave of acceptance. Like, whoa, okay, I'm fine with where I am. I don't have a destination anymore. This is just me. Another commenter adds, after I decided to desist, my relationship to my body improved dramatically. Now I don't hate any part of my body anymore, and I feel more compelled to take care of myself now that I have positive feelings about my body. Like it deserves to be taken care of, and it can also help me reach my goals. Next post, titled, Serious. Why is the trans suicide rate so high? This isn't intended to hate on trans people. I mean, I literally am trans. This is a very controversial topic, but it's something that I've always wondered about. Is it because they don't pass as their intended sex? They didn't receive proper care? Their dysphoria didn't go away even after transitioning? Did they realize they messed up by transitioning? Is it because friends and family didn't accept? It's a scary thing, but personally, I've never considered suicide, luckily, despite having bad dysphoria. No offense, but being a trans person sucks. I wish I was just born in my preferred sex, or born as a regular guy without dysphoria. From the comments, one commenter adds, because no physical solution cures a mental disorder. Another commenter adds, gender reassignment surgery and the trans identity does not always fix trauma and other concerns. Signed, a therapist. As a note, this user has a verified therapist flair, though I don't know how much I trust that. Another person adds, typically, trans people aren't the most stable of people and have a lot of issues that don't have a quick fix like hormones. Another commenter adds, I am pretty sure the suicide rate is actually grossly exaggerated. Even then, if you're constantly surrounded by adults and other teenagers who tell you that trans people who don't get HRT/surgery/whatever end up killing themselves, you'll start to internalize and formulate these thoughts yourselves. I genuinely think the idea is put in most of their heads, especially because some doctors have been caught telling kids to threaten to kill themselves and even act out the pieces in order to get their unsupportive parents to cooperate. Sadly, I just can't seem to track down the article for it now, but there was one doctor in Canada who got busted for just that. No one else commented with this, but I myself found the link, which I will include in the description. Another commenter adds, One contributory factor is that people who identify as trans are very disproportionately likely to be Asperger's / high functioning normal intelligence autistic, and Asperger's / HFA people kill ourselves at something like 10 times the rate in the population at large. Next post, titled HRT as a Diagnostic Tool. I've seen this phrase thrown around multiple trans subreddits. I've seen stories of people who said that during the first month is when I really could tell this was for me, and claimed that their brains were meant to run on that hormone. Isn't that a placebo that you know and expect bodily changes, and in turn you feel better? I've seen detrans people who felt fine on HRT, and then came to realize they didn't like it, so that's why I'm raising this question. This has been on my mind lately, and I do believe that what the Gender Dysphoria Bible calls biochemical dysphoria is pseudoscientific BS. Any opinions? From the comments, one person adds, I think that this is more of a misrepresentation of the effects of hormones. For example, testosterone does have a moderate antidepressant effect, even in men who take it for low testosterone levels. It can decrease fatigue. So, a woman who is depressed, fatigued, may initially feel better, but that doesn't mean this is proof my brain is a man brain, because anyone taking testosterone replacement will notice some effects on mood. I don't know as much about estrogen HRT, but I can assume it's similar. Like if a bio male feels closed off from his emotions and then starts taking estrogen and has an easier time expressing emotions / crying, then may feel like this is proof of being more genuine as a woman or something. That was a random guess because I know T made it impossible for me to cry. It's this myth that caused me to make the mistake of trying it. Another person adds, I think they like to get people on HRT ASAP because weakened passive men are amenable to further suggestion. With female to males, kinda the same thing. Probably feels awesome, much like cocaine or heroin would first time. Look up the assassins, Hashishins. They allegedly used what sounds like a strong hit of edible weed, followed by a romp with prostitutes in a beautiful garden as initiation. I add as a note, very interesting. The Order of Al-Hashashin were a Shia sect who partook in hashish, and were the basis of the term assassination due to the murder techniques they were famous for. The Mongols got them, however. Another commenter adds, You are absolutely right. I noticed absolutely zero change in my mental state after starting estrogen. It's literally just a placebo effect. Anyone who uses these catchphrases are just experiencing confirmation bias. I want to be female, these hormones make me look like one, so now I'm happy. Another commenter adds, placebo effect, plus it's hard to stop once you've started. Next post, titled, Insight to My Mind and Why I Thought I Was Trans. Trigger warning, sex assault. I've had a difficult childhood. I was always a masculine child and used to hang out with boys more than girls in elementary and half middle school. When I found out the transgender label, it seemed like the perfect fit to me, the answer to all my problems, but it wasn't. I was also sexually assaulted in the 9th grade by a boy a year older than me. What left me obviously with trauma regarding my body and reproductive / exclusively woman parts of it. That did not help on growing up like a normal girl. It made me disgusted. I thought if I presented as a boy and appeared to be it, I wouldn't have to go through it again. Therefore, I had a really bad relationship with my body until more or less a year ago that I started to accept its feminine parts. But still, I've gone through ups and downs, months when I couldn't stand looking at myself, and months when I was perfectly fine about it. Now I don't really care. I've surpassed that trauma, and I don't mind having breasts, having wider hips, or having a vagina. Those are part of me, and I think I had to accept them later or not. I think I was just going through a really assy moment when I was presented the idea of being trans and it seemed perfect, but actually was not. And I just accepted the fact I was trans because I didn't really give it any second thoughts. Next post, titled Self-Obsession and Trans Identity. The search for self is ever present. What would philosophy or religion be without the simple question, who am I? I scrambled to find myself through a haze of mental illnesses, drugs, trauma, and pain, only to find myself amongst a heap of people just like me. Queer, gender non-conforming, resistant to the systems that be. I held on to this community in person and online. But I was very sick. We were all very sick. Self-obsession manifests in funny ways. Someone misgendering me would make me want to die. The perfect micro-labels were so incredibly important to find. My experience with my gender consumed my thought life. I isolated myself, experienced horrific, self-induced dysphoria. I needed to find me, whoever that was. Changing my wardrobe, my body, just changed physical things. My mind stayed in the same pain. The only relief I have found is through lowering the importance of self in my life. My expression may be altered or expanded by cosmetic treatments, but that is all they will be. My spirit needs to be tended to. Humility and God have been my medicine. From the comments, I've definitely had similar thoughts. I was one of the Zoomer children who was pulled into an obsessive who am I search for my identity before I even had the actual life itself to know in the first place. It was a bitter pill to swallow when I realized I just wanted to live a normal life and that what had happened had only made my life worse. And that you only become who you are by living your life instead of thinking about it. We in the West are all so alienated now. We are all very spiritually sick. God bless you, friend. I love you. Another commenter adds, very true. It's quite an interesting juxtaposition of extreme self-hatred and extreme ego, and the very image of the narcissist projecting an outward self-importance to protect the crying little child inside. And now to this video's last post. I'm coming back to myself. I never thought I would be here. I was masculine right from the beginning. As a small child, I remember I was waiting for my penis to grow in. I was about 7 when I realized it wasn't going to happen, and that's when I first came out. I didn't know the word transgender or the concept, but I knew I was supposed to be a boy. That was obvious to me. My mother wouldn't have it. She wanted a girly girl, and I was her greatest disappointment. She never stopped trying to fix me and make me a real girl. The really sick thing is that the real reason she wanted me to be feminine was she was also a deranged pedophile of a woman who raped me constantly between the ages of 3 to 15 and continued groping and assaulting me in other ways until I was 23 and cut contact for good. She used to grab me by the crotch and say, "See? You were born a girl. You can't change that. Why fight it?" And I would feel the shame creep up hot in my face every time. But for all her efforts, she never won. I couldn't help being myself. I was a rough and tumble little girl, and I played sports and I wrestled with boys. I would hide my hair under a baseball cap and call myself Jack. I loved cars and video games and shooting a BB gun. I was always one of the guys. Boys became my friends easily. I was never able to be friends with girls, but I was attracted to them. I realized I was gay when I was 9, and I really genuinely came to believe that God hated me because of it. The shame was terrible. I knew I couldn't change who I was. As I had always wanted to grow up to be somebody's husband, I didn't feel like I was a straight guy. I felt like I was a lesbian. I couldn't have that. I couldn't be something God hated. But then I fell in love young with my first girlfriend. We were 11 when we met. Our relationship was like a public secret. Everyone sort of knew, but no one talked about it. She was ashamed of herself as a Catholic, and in turn felt like she was ashamed of me at times. But she was the first person who ever liked me for myself when I was with her. I got to do all the boy things I wanted to do. We did things very traditionally, gender-wise. I went masculine and she went feminine. But as puberty marched on for me, my body came to feel like a prison. I hated it. I would look myself in the mirror and imagine what the real me should have been instead of the soft, curvy monstrosity I was trapped in. It didn't matter how much I worked out. It was never enough. Before I knew it, I was starving myself to stay thin and get rid of my curves. But then when I was 14, I learned about being trans. I knew immediately that that was what I was. I cried and cried knowing there was a word for it and a solution to my problem. Medical transition wasn't available to minors then. I knew I would have to wait until 18. But I came out anyways. I picked a name for myself and started to bind for the very first time in my life. I started to see myself in the mirror. It was a social disaster. None of my friends would speak to me anymore. I was bullied and I got jumped a couple of times. Adults were convinced it was a phase I would get over. My girlfriend gave me an ultimatum. If I wanted to be with her, I had to give up being trans. I caved under the pressure and went miserably back to be pretending I wasn't trans. But the feelings never left me. My girlfriend and I broke up at the end of high school. I developed bipolar disorder, went into a bit of a tailspin, and ended up in a relationship with a man. I'd gotten the thought in my head that I could fix myself into being bisexual, but I couldn't. I was miserable. He ended up raping me one day when he came home on meth, and then I finally found the courage to leave. I spent a while living as a butch lesbian, went back to university, hooked up with girls casually at night. I would drink myself to sleep, crying over how much I hated my uterus. Everything about my body made me feel worthless and vulnerable. But I didn't want to transition then. I wanted to fix myself. Eventually, I was so suicidal I felt I had no other options left. I went to my doctor and asked her to start the process. I passed quickly, and I loved it. For the first time in my life, I belonged. My family wasn't supportive, but others were. My masculinity no longer made people uncomfortable once they could see me as a man. I could just be myself and have people like me for myself. I felt like I could finally see the man I was in the mirror. I loved living as a man, and I loved the effects of testosterone. I was certain I was going all the way. I was determined to get bottom surgery. I wanted what I had always wanted more than anything else. I wanted a penis. And I really felt like I was on my way to getting one. I never thought I could really change sex, but I figured I'd get so close to it, it would be worth it. Then, last year, 4 years into transition, I found a trauma therapist who could actually help me with my PTSD. I had tried with others and made little progress, but she introduced me to a new therapeutic technique, and slowly for the first time in my life, I really began to heal. I could feel my body for the first time. How tired it was, how beautiful it was. The idea of surgery began to cause me real anxiety. Where before there was only excitement, fear and doubt crept in. I thought, can it really be the answer to put my body through more pain? How can I be healing myself by injuring myself? and I started to see my body, not as a gendered thing that always held me back, but as a wonderful machine, a gift with so much in it, so much laughter, and so much happiness, and so much strength. It was like a dam broke in me. The tears I wept coming back to myself, coming to see that my body was not my enemy but my friend. It felt like I had finally been forgiven by God, but really, I knew it was me who had forgiven God for making me the way I am. I cancelled my top surgery date. I stopped taking my testosterone. I waxed my beard. I looked in the mirror and I still saw myself. I saw that I was a masculine and that I was a female, and that I didn't have to give one up on one for the sake of another. I felt all my life that I wasn't supposed to exist the way that I was, that no one wanted me. But I know in my heart now that even if other people don't understand me, I am still loved. I'm still wanted. I exist because I exist. My breasts and my uterus aren't what I wanted, but they're still beautiful parts of me. It's beautiful to know that I could grow a child inside me. It's beautiful to know I could feed a baby. It wasn't what I wanted, but I don't care anymore. My body deserves my love. I can't explain it to anyone I know. I actually feel like I can't understand them anymore, and they can't understand me. Like we're speaking different languages. I'm realized I'm surrounded by atheists who make me feel like a fool for my faith. I'm surrounded by activists who are hypocrites when it comes down to it. I'm surrounded by people who are so committed to their politics, they feel threatened to see me find happiness through a different path. I am a butch lesbian, and I am beautiful. And I'm not giving up on myself by detransitioning. What I'm really doing is finally treating myself with the compassion and the respect that I deserve. I thought I was respecting myself by trying to get what I thought maleness was. Now I know I can only really respect myself by embracing the femaleness wholeheartedly. I thought my body was my weakness. I now know that it's my strength. Thank you for watching.